You'd think your favorite restaurant chain would be around forever. After all, that's where your grandpa took your grandma on their first date. But guess what? Some of those same places might not survive long enough for you to take your grandkids there. Why? Because they're on the verge of shutting down in 2025. So which restaurants are we talking about? And how did things get this bad? Stick around. These 12 chains may not be around much longer. 1. Subway. Subway used to be the go-to lunch spot across America. Back in 2016, it hit its peak with over 27,000 locations in the US alone. Yep, it was bigger than McDonald's in store count, and with its massive NFL marketing deals, Subway seemed untouchable. But here's the thing, all that scale was hiding a messy reality. Franchises were oversaturated, profits were thin, and the stores just weren't keeping up with the times. While other fast casual spots were installing touchscreens and offering trendy items, Subway clung to a tired image of soggy bread and limp lettuce. By the end of 2024, Subway had closed over 7,600 locations. Meanwhile, foot traffic has been dipping by 2.3% year after year. To make things worse, Subway lost its prized NFL sponsorship deal to Jersey Mike's in 2025. Simply put, Subway is struggling to stay fresh, pun absolutely intended. Unless it can totally revamp the experience, the Sandwich King might keep shrinking in 2025 and beyond. 2. Hooters. Let's go back to the 1980s when Hooters was the place to be. The wings were hot, the vibe was loud, and the servers were dressed like they were heading to a football-themed beach party. It built its brand on a certain cheeky appeal that worked great back then. It was edgy, it was bold, and it sold. But here's the problem. What worked in 1985 doesn't always work in 2025. Culture changed, and diners evolved. Hooters were still living in the past. Younger consumers started craving modern menus, inclusive atmospheres, and restaurants that didn't look stuck in a time capsule. As a result, Hooters fell out of sync. In 2024, sales dropped over 16%. The company responded by closing about 14% of its stores, leaving only 251 restaurants still flapping their wings. Then came the big. In March 2025, Hooters filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and sold off most of its company-owned restaurants to franchisees just to lighten its financial load. Now, you might think new ownership could help, and maybe it will, but the brand still faces an uphill battle. The atmosphere doesn't resonate with modern diners, and attempts at rebranding have been awkward at best. Moving forward, Hooters has 2 choices: grow up or fade out. And right now, the wings aren't the only thing that's in danger of being cooked. 3. Red Lobster. For decades, Red Lobster was the face of seafood dining in America. Cheddar Bay biscuits were a national treasure, celebrated anniversary, and it was fancy budget. At its peak, Red Lobster was pulling in 64 million customer visits annually and raking in $2 billion in sales. But all that started to change when the chain began making, well, let's just say, questionable decisions. The most infamous of them all was the Ultimate Endless Shrimp promotion in 2020. It was supposed to bring in diners with unbeatable value. Instead, it ended up costing the company $11 million in losses. And that wasn't a one-time mistake, it was part of a larger trend of overspending and underdelivering. And by May 2024, the company was drowning in over $1 billion and had less than $30 million in cash. That's like having a yacht with no... They filed for Chapter 11 and shut down nearly 100 locations. Sales dropped 23% to $1.68 billion, and the total number of stores shrank by 20%. Even after emerging from bankruptcy later in the year with new ownership and a new CEO, the chain still hasn't won over frustrated customers. Complaints about cold food, high prices, and inconsistent service continue to haunt them in 2025. The biscuits are still amazing, but sadly, biscuits alone can't keep the lights on. Red Lobster enters 2025 a shadow of its former self, and unless it finds a way to stop being wasteful and win back trust, it could be underwater for good. 4. Applebee's. Once upon a time, Applebee's was the very definition of casual dining in the suburbs. It was reliable, affordable, and packed every Friday night with families, co-workers, and date night hope. The appetizers were awesome, the drinks were flowing, and the music was always just loud enough to make you yell across the table. But times have changed, and Applebee's hasn't exactly kept up. Behind the scenes, the company has been buried under private equity debt for years. Add that to rising labor and food costs, and it's no surprise that many of its franchisees are struggling to stay afloat. In 2024, branches were closing fast, and parent company Dine Brands is now holding debt more than 6 times its earnings. Even worse, the way people eat has changed. Diners have shifted to fast casual places that are faster, fresher, and often cheaper. So while Applebee's is still a household name, it's no longer the first pick for most people under 40. In 2025, the brand is trying everything everything from menu overhauls to tech up, but without a complete identity shift, Applebee's may be next in line for a major collapse. 5. The Cheesecake Factory. There was a time when going to the Cheesecake Factory felt like an event. You didn't just eat there. You committed to a multi-hour feast with a 30-page menu, portion sizes big enough to feed a volley. It was quirky, fun, and just upscale enough to feel fancy, but as much as the name still sparks nostalgia. The Cheesecake Factory has started to crumble under pressure. In 2024, sales growth slowed, inflation kept biting into profits, and diners became more select. Simply put, people aren't lining up for 3-hour dinners like they used to. While the Cheesecake Factory hasn't declared bankruptcy, it's been forced to trim the fat. That means shutting down underperforming stores and halting expansion. But even with these efforts, margins remain tight in 2025. You may think a brand this iconic would be immune to industry pressure, but that's not how it works anymore. Consumers want convenience, speed, and value. So if your chicken pasta is $28 and takes 50 minutes, you're in trouble. The Cheesecake Factory enters 2025, hoping that nostalgia and desserts will carry it through, but without deeper structural change. It risks becoming another bloated chain sink under its own. 6. Buffalo Wild. Buffalo Wild Wings used to be the king of sports bars. There was a game on, you were watching it at B-dubs with a plate of wings and a beer in hand. For years, it thrived in that rowdy, high-energy environment. The problem is, that vibe doesn't the same value in 2025 as it did in 2012. First of all, competition is everywhere. Smaller, faster, trendier bars and wing joints have popped up left and right. At the same time, food and labor costs skyrocketed. Meanwhile, Buffalo Wild Wings stuck with a menu and business model that felt increasingly bloated and slow. In 2023 and early 2025, it began quietly closing locations that couldn't meet performance expectations. Same-store sales fell behind competitors, and customer loyalty is nowhere near what it used to be. The chain has hinted at simplifying its menu and franchising more stores to keep costs down. That might help on paper, but the real challenge is relevance. The sports bar model isn't dead, but it has to evolve. Buffalo Wild Wings now faces a hard truth. It must become leaner, faster, and more digitally savvy, or risk losing its grip completely. Sure, the wings are still good, but in 2025, they're not enough. 7. Taco Bell. Taco Bell used to be the king of quirky fast food, and people loved it. It became the unofficial drive-thru for night owls and students on a budget. But things haven't been quite as spicy in recent years. For starters, food safety scares have made some people think twice about that late-night chalupa run. Then came the supply chain hiccups. When the beef runs out and ingredients are missing, even the loyal fans start jumping ship. In 2024, Taco Bell tried bouncing back with flashy new items like the grilled cheese dipping taco and the volcano menu reboot. However, foot traffic didn't exactly explode, and competitors like Chipotle and Del Taco kept gaining ground. Even Jack in the Box started creeping into their taco territory. The digital push helped, but not enough, because in 2025, the pressure is very real. Taco Bell has to strike gold with every new release or risk being seen as stale. If not, they'll keep losing late-night warriors to other drive-thrus. It's no longer just about fun flavor. It's now survival. 8. IHOP. IHOP was once the undisputed breakfast capital of America. The pancakes were stacked sky high, the syrup flowed freely, and the name gave it an oddly fancy vibe. From churchgoers to college kids nursing hangovers, everyone loved IHOP, but the past few years haven't been kind. As breakfast traffic isn't what it used to be, consumers are eating lighter or grabbing a protein bar instead of sitting down for a platter of pancakes, and that's been a major punch to the gut. In 2024, IHOP had to close underperforming locations as rising labor and ingredient costs squeezed profit. Parent company Dine Brands is also heavily in debt, which means there's not much room for error. To survive, IHOP is now betting big on lunch and dinner. Burgers, chicken sandwiches, and even fish and chips are showing up on menus that used to be all about eggs and bacon. Even before the pandemic, complaints started pouring in. Issues such as overpriced meals, poor service, and the sense that you were paying for Instagram clout instead of quality steak dealt a huge blow to its customer base. When COVID hit, foot traffic crumbled. And unlike fast food chains that pivoted to delivery, Salt Bay's steakhouses relied on sit-down buzz that just disappeared. By 2024, debt was stacking up fast, and locations quietly closed, especially in cities like Dallas and Las Vegas. Yep, that coastal upscale vibe couldn't cover the cracks anymore. In 2025, Salt BAE is now fighting to refinance and restructure, but investors are spooked, brand hype is fading, and the dining public is no longer impressed by silly theatrics. To put it plainly, Salt Bae's restaurants need more than a viral moment to survive. They need a full-scale menu and management makeover before the whole thing crumbles like old steak seasoning. 11. Denny's. Denny's used to be the default diner across America. Whether it was 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., you could walk in and grab a Grand Slam or Moons Over My Hammy without breaking the bank. Families, travelers, college kids, and night shift workers all kept Denny's busy. But those days are fading fast, all thanks to rising inflation, changing eating habits, and labor shortages. These factors have absolutely battered this once reliable chain. In 2024, Denny's closed 88 locations, but don't think that's where it stops, because it plans to shut down up to 90 more in 2025. That's nearly 180 locations in 2 years. Many Denny's branches are struggling to make ends meet, especially in smaller towns where foot traffic has dropped hard. In fact, customers are now thinking twice before spending $15 on a breakfast combo when cheaper drive-through options exist. Now in 2025, Denny's has to either shrink dramatically or find a way to offer better value without burning its loyal base. 12. Red Robin. Red Robin was once the place where burgers weren't just fast food. You'd go there for gourmet options, bottomless fries, and that fun, casual energy. It was family-friendly, had solid kids' meals, and felt like the slightly fancier cousin of a diner. But underneath the surface, a lot of trouble was brewing. Management missteps and rising costs quietly ate into margins for years. And then came the financial fallout. In 2023, Red Robin posted a net loss of $21 million. And by 2024, that ballooned to a brutal $77.5 million. That's more than triple in losses in just 12 months. To stop the bleeding, the company laid out plans to shut down around 70 stores by 2028, with at least 15 set to close in 2025 alone. Painfully, every closure cuts deep, especially as competition from fast casual spots like Shake Shack, Five Guys grows stronger. Now in 2025, Red Robin is swinging hard. They're cutting costs, shrinking menus, trimming hours, and trying to streamline operation. Feels like damage control rather than long-term strategy. And if they can't bounce back soon, Red Robin may go from bottomless fries to bottom of. Head to the comments and tell us which of these restaurant chains will survive the drop or go down. And if you enjoyed watching this video, subscribe to our channel.